Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Marijke Roeck from the City of Antwerp, and I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the opportunities that lie in our city for mobility as a service. What I'm going to tell you is based on a survey that we did at the beginning of 2020, and it was a survey among commuters that commute to the City of Antwerp or to the Port of Antwerp, and commuters that commute to businesses in the wider region around the city, so in our transport region. On the basis of that survey, we've seen that there does exist something that can be called an urban mobility lifestyle and a more, let's say, pardon my French, a more rural mobility lifestyle. Let's dive into this right away. When we look at the relationship between other Antwerp commuters and their cars, it's important to point out that the commuters that live in the city, half of them doesn't have a car, half of them does, but the half that doesn't have a car offers, of course, great opportunities for mobility as a service. In comparison to the people who live in the region and commute in the region, the ratio is 7 out of 10 that have a car. So I think it's far more difficult here to kind of cater for a mobility need, because most people there have a car waiting for them outside on the street. When we have a look at the use of shared cars, here again, it's the Antwerp commuter that lives in the city that is far familiar with this kind of offer. Here we have at least more than 4% of commuters that travel by means of a shared car. When you look at commuters in our Antwerp transport region, we're talking about only 1%. And when we look at the ownership of bikes, again, in Antwerp, almost 7 out of 10 people own their own bike, whereas it is 6 out of 10 of the commuters in the region. And there's even a bigger difference when you look at the number of commuters that have a year pass on shared bikes, like for instance, Velo. Here we see that a quarter of our commuters has a year pass on Velo. So this means that for them, using a shared mobility is something that is quite normal. When you look at commuters that commute towards the region, then you see that there is no need to use these kinds of shared mobility. So here we see only 8% of commuters that own a year pass on this system. And the difference is kind of, if you want to continue this line, you can also have a look at the number of year passes for the lane, where we see that 1 out of 3 Antwerp commuters living in the city and working in the city has got a year pass and is probably using it also. Whereas when you look at the regional commuters, there it's only 1 out of 5 that has a year pass by the lane. The situation is a little bit different when you look at the way that people choose for the train or not. And here it's a little bit obvious. When you live and work in the city, you're not that likely to have a year pass with our national railroad company. But when you live in the region, of course, it's often rail that helps you to get to the city or to the region in a fast way. Now, you see that there is a bigger need in the city than it is in the region to make use of micromobility or of public transport. So if the need is bigger there, the need is also bigger for mobility as a service. But is there also a need to shift? When we have a look at the way at the satisfaction that commuters have, people commuting towards the city are often far less satisfied. What is important here also to point out is that the chances are very high that you are a proud owner of a smartphone. Up to 90% of our commuters has got a smartphone, and up to 70% is prepared to use this smartphone to pay for the mobility offers they are using. So these are all reasons why we believe that the city of Antwerp, but also the region, is offering opportunities for mass providers to, let's say, grow their businesses. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end of this. Thank you.